Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is my reaction to the latest Candace Owens versus Piers Morgan debate on Christ is King. Enjoy.
Why did you leave the Daily Wire?
Well, unfortunately, I can't talk about the specific reasons that I left the Daily Wire, but what I can do is respond to whatever reasons were given to the public. And obviously, no sooner did we agree to leave than Andrew Klavan of the Daily Wire did an entire episode stating that the reasons that I was leaving was because I was anti-Semitic and I was engaging in a type of anti-Semitism that was hard to pin down. And that is why in my first episode of launching my independent podcast, I hit back pretty hard at him because I think it's pretty despicable, first and foremost, as a colleague who I had a great relationship with, to have engaged in that, knowing that I was not at liberty to say anything. I thought it was a very underhanded, disgusting tactic, and I responded in force.
I want to play you what Ben Shapiro told me when I asked him about this on Uncensored. One of the consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the center of a very high profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all. The only thing I will say is what I've said all along with regard to Candace or with regard to any of our other hosts. I am not in hiring and firing position with the Daily Wire. I'm a co-founder of the Daily Wire. I'm a co-owner of the Daily Wire. I'm not actually in management. And as far as the free speech situation, what I will say is that no company has the obligation to literally pay anyone. The Daily Wire is a publisher. It is not a platform.
Do you agree with that, Candace?
Agree with which part?
Well, okay, any of it.
Well, I think that it's interesting, and I'd love to sit down with and debate Ben Shapiro on a number of topics, particularly cancel culture, because I know that he's made some comments in the past that he believes that publishers, platforms should allow people to have different ideas. And so those particular comments to me sound in contrast to what he has said in the past, but I can't speak on behalf of him, obviously. I personally believe that media companies are healthier when you allow people to have different opinions and allow people to debate those opinions. Personally, I love to see a debate between two people, and so I can only tell you what my perspective is.
Okay. So basically, let me just translate I'll just translate it into truth speak. Okay? Because I have this magical ability that the subtitles of truth, I just press it and I see the actual truth underneath them, not the BS. All right. So basically, and so many people have accused him of this. Okay, so many other influencers and so on social media have commented, and not just now after October 7th, for many years, but especially now. Ben Shapiro. It's just, he's not consistent, okay? When it has to do with Israel, you're not really allowed the free speech. They're championing all these free speech, so-called right-wing conservatives, free speech issues, okay? But when it comes to Israel, yeah, he's not 100% there with the free speech, okay? So that's, what do we call it? What can we call it? Cognitive dissonance, hypocrisy, whatever else, okay? You pick a term, but certainly it's not the right thing to do, okay? This is why people, including Candace, including me, probably including Piers Morgan, okay, but he doesn't push back enough, as much as he should. Nobody pushes back as much as they should, aside from Candace, okay? I mean, I don't understand why, if we basically use the same rules we use with everybody else, we do that when it comes to Israel, it's suddenly bad when we do that, okay? I don't know. This is like a spoiled child syndrome that they have or something. I really don't understand. Okay.
And can't really speak for him.
I mean, he made the point at the end there that any company, any private company, when it comes to free speech, is not compelled to pay people to work for them. I mean, would you accept that as a principle?
Well, what I would say again is that it just kind of runs into what is wrong. I guess the question you could ask is, what is wrong if CNN fires somebody for having a different opinion? What then is wrong if Fox News fires somebody for having a different opinion? Your answer would have to be that it's not wrong and that companies are at will to curate whatever belief system that they want and to not allow free speech.
Yeah, okay, because the Daily Wire is founded apparently on the belief of free speech, okay? Like I said before, they're constantly championing it and so on. Apparently they're making movie. They made that movie with Gina Carano trying to fight the Disneyfication of entertainment, of the movie industry and all that good stuff. But then they roll that back, okay? They go back on their, I don't know, what could we call it, like company mission, okay? Their company vision, their basic, the foundational block, okay? The foundation of that company is free speech, apparently, okay? And with free speech, fortunately or unfortunately, we must be able to accept speech that we don't like, that doesn't suit us, okay? So that's a problem with Ben Shapiro, okay? That's why some people, I mean, this might be borderline anti-Semitic, this phrase, but they call it some people online I've seen, especially on Twitter, it's the Wild West over there right now, it's so much fun. People are calling it the Israeli Wire instead of the Daily Wire, okay? It's a little bit full on, that, but you understand why, okay?
So,
Out of interest, is it true that you signed an NDA and that's why you can't really talk about this in detail?
I cannot speak in detail about any of that stuff.
You can't even confirm whether you've had an NDA?
I am not free to speak.
She's not allowed to comment on the situation, and yet magically Andrew Klavan is. Fantastic, isn't it?
Speak about any topic pertaining to contracts signed or not signed, and so.
You see, this is where it gets interesting for me, because you referenced Andrew Klavan from the Daily Wire. I want to play a part of what he said, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't like
The Daily
him.
Wire parted ways with Candace Owens, and part of it was things that she was saying that we felt were strongly anti-Semitic. And she was doing it in such a way that it was kind of hard to pin down, so I was trying to show where these things happen.
So I'm bemused, because I've been involved in a lot of contracts in my time. I've been an employer, I've been an employee, and so on. I don't understand why somebody from the Daily Wire can be so explicit about the reasons you left, and yet you are not able to be as explicit to defend yourself or to counter what they're saying.
Amen, Piers. Amen. I think that is probably a question that was on a lot of people's minds. And, what can I say other than what was it that Kanye was saying about contracts? And, I think it is, even if you believe that it is valid for that to happen, I think it is immoral to allow someone to attack someone and to not allow them to defend their name. And so for me, Andrew actually rose to the level of defamation when he started claiming that I had actually said things that I had never said. I mean, he flagrantly lies, and I showed that on my platform when he pretended that I did an episode suggesting that Adolf Hitler burning books was a good thing. I wasn't even speaking about Adolf Hitler. It's a nonsense thing.
With Photo Vibrance, you can transform any photo into a mesmerizing moving image in just a few clicks.
That I would do that on my platform. and it's a trick also. It's meant to make people feel emotional, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she's supporting Adolf Hitler. And I thought it was nasty business. I thought it was extremely nasty business. And, you know, for me, Piers, it's important for me to state, my name means a lot to me. You know, my grandfather grew up on a share.
We need, people have had enough, okay? She is just one of millions who believes these things, who's had enough of this also. She has the platform and the balls to actually speak about it. There's millions of people in the West that are absolutely fed up with all these accusations of, oh, you're a neo-Nazi, you're a white nationalist, you're white, that even worse term, white supremacist, that word supremacist, okay? Because every other tribe is allowed to have pride in their culture and their heritage, and whatever else, except for the whites. Why is that? I really would like to know, okay? It's just not right, okay? So, and whoever it may be, I mean, she's black, okay? And she's also being accused of these things, all right? So we have insane situations with the left. They call, you know, black conservative influencers, they call them white supremacists and so on, as if it's like this nebulous term that can be applied to anyone. I mean, this is all so Orwellian, all right? And these buzzwords are not only, but primarily, like I would say 90% of the time, easy, maybe more, are used primarily to shut people down. And you know, the accusation holds no real water, doesn't hold any water, it doesn't really have any weight behind it, okay? So it's just like the word conspiracy theorist. Like, I mean, conspiracy theorists, it's basically proven that more or less they have higher IQ, okay? They're in the top 5% of the IQs because they basically because the higher the IQ, the better the pattern recognition skills. Look this up, it's true. So it's basically people that are smarter and they have better pattern recognition skills. So they see a pattern, they see something coming, they see the bigger picture way sooner than the masses do, okay? Than the large, like the bulk of the population in society does. So they see things coming sooner, all right? So the dumbasses who don't, the NPCs, the Kool-Aid drinkers, whatever you want to call them, they're like, oh, conspiracy, they think you're crazy. But then people like that get proven correct, like 10 or 20 years later, or whatever the case may be. So that's a BS buzzword, as are the words I mentioned before that have to do with this particular topic. And it's tiring, guys. It's getting tiring. Like even people watching this video and saying, "Oh my God, he's saying the words, the bad words that are not meant to be mentioned on YouTube, and talking about that he's going places that he shouldn't be going on YouTube." Why? Because I'm saying that we're using Orwellian buzzwords to shut communication down, to shut critical thinking down, to shut constructive criticism down. Why? What's wrong with speaking out, with saying the truth, with saying, hey, look, I don't like what you're doing to a particular group, okay? We'll get into, she will lead us more into where I'm sort of hinting that I was going to go, but let's continue now.
Sharecropping farm, one of 12 children, you know, in the segregated South, Robert Owens Sr., and for him to have worked the way that he worked and to have instilled the Christian values in me that he instilled in me growing up, the idea that I would allow someone to so flagrantly throw dirt on his name, it was never going to fly.
Did you ever say or do anything which to a Jewish ear could be construed as anti-Semitic?
There we go.
Well, let's be clear about all of these topics, whether we're talking about racism, sexism, anti-Semitism. Everything can be construed to an ear when you're talking about a subjective ear that I believe that this is racist. I mean, I could say, hey, Piers, you even asking me questions. And to me, it feels racist, right?
And also, okay, maybe it's not my lived experience, but because I'm not, well, I guess I was a minority when I was in Australia, because I've got dual citizenship, Greece and Australia, because I was born in Melbourne. I did my primary school years there, and I lived much of my adult years there as well. So I guess I felt like I was kind of a second-class citizen-ish, okay, because I was not of Anglo-Celtic background, but Greek. So I've kind of felt it's kind of my lived experience only from that, in that sense, but not to the point where, I would never fully understand how what it's like to be Jewish and to be subjected to heavy anti-Semitism, or black, or a woman, or whatever. Okay, so I'm admitting from the outset that I don't fully understand. Like I said, I do have that Greek Australian experience, so that's sort of partially having a partially real experience. I butchered that sentence, but you know what I mean. Like, I can somewhat understand what it's like, but I haven't experienced the full force of, minority hood. But you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to have experienced it yourself to understand the following. The minority groups, whether they're women or Jews or LGBTQ people or whatever, or what have you, they, because of that history of persecution, they are overly sensitive to certain things. Okay, so a lot of the time, I wouldn't put a percentage on it, but let's say arbitrarily, maybe 3/4 of the time, 75%, 80% of the time, it's a nothing burger most of the time. It's just that they get triggered by the slightest little thing. So this is what she's trying to say here. It's like, well, not every little thing is anti-Semitic. Not every little thing for the feminists, for example, is anti-woman. Okay, not for black people. Not every little thing. I didn't do such and such thing because you were black. Like whatever it may be. Certain behaviors of police or whatever. Okay. But because the minorities have had particular history of being treated a certain way by another group, which they consider the oppressor group, but that's another story altogether. I don't want to get into that, like that victim oppressor, that Marxist victim oppressor narrative, which is, it's tearing civilization apart, but that's for another video. So they consider, like, they're living, a lot of these people are living, the ones that complain, that is, they're living in this perpetual cycle of I'm a victim, I'm a victim, I'm a victim, okay? And it's reinforced by their family and friends and their upbringing, and generation, with each new generation over generation, it keeps going on and on and on for decades, centuries, perhaps. So also, if we want to get a little bit metaphysical, I can't help myself from going there occasionally. It's like a genetic trauma, okay? It's a racial trauma as well. So it's very deeply rooted in the hindbrain, okay? In the fight or flight, in the reptile brain, okay? Which is the primitive brain, which is just purely fight or flight survival, okay? Knee-jerk reactions, okay? Like the part of our brain that when we put our hand on a burning stove, it goes back like that. So the knee-jerk reaction to some of these trigger words is almost like that, like putting the hand on the stove and go, so you hear, it's like Christ is king, anti-Semitism. All right, so that's mostly what it is. It's like it's a reptilian brain, it's an R complex, reactive mind, whatever, if you want to use the Ron Hubbard term from Dianetics, or whatever, subconscious, if you want to use the far inferior Freudian stuff. So Jung, that's a guy I like. Freud, not so much. So yeah, it's basically for overwhelmingly, it is just a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, I'm not just singling out, the ADL and the Jewish people that they get triggered by some of these things that are, they're constantly on the lookout for Nazis around every corner. It's just anyone, like I explained a couple of minutes ago, anyone that has a history, whether their gender or their race, has, where it's basically like the trauma is in their DNA at this point, okay? And so, I mean, you can look it up, whether you believe these things or not, just Google it, you will find there is such a thing as genetic trauma, like racial trauma, okay? So it's a real thing we need to contend with. So much of this stuff is just these things just playing out, okay? People getting triggered, their ancestral trauma being triggered, and they're just acting out. But if they were detached, or either if they were detached, or if a third party was just, sitting by the sidelines observing the reaction, it'll be like, they'll be agreeing with what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is the actual true analysis of the situation, of why this happens for the most part. They'll be saying, wow, yeah, that is like a knee-jerk reaction, relax, dude, you're overreacting. Like, to a third-party observer, it would be clear that for the most part these things are just overreactions, right? But the person himself, because they haven't healed that racial trauma, that genetic trauma, to them it's real. Like I said, it's just the putting the hand on the stove thing. So it's like, so this bottle is like boiling water, but like, okay, so that's mostly, for the most part, what it is. I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm just saying that's what it is, right?
A feeling and a fact are two different things. So
There you go.
what someone construes
Feelings.
something is meaningless. Factually.
So it goes even deeper than feelings, because our feeling brain is the second brain, which is the limbic system. It's the emotional brain. But this goes even deeper, what I was saying. It's the R complex, which is like purely the instinctual brain. So it goes even deeper than feelings. This visceral reaction that people get from certain things. Like, for instance, like Candace's people, okay? The N-word. I can understand it. I wouldn't want to use that word. If I was black, I wouldn't want my friends to use. They use it amongst each other. But we had a similar one in Australia that the Anglo-Australians called us back in the day, like in the 50s and 60s, when they were legit racist. They're not so much anymore, but back then they were. They had a word spelled W-O-G, wog. They used to call us that. Basically, the English called anyone who wasn't English, they called them that. I mean, they probably call the Irish that, and the Irish are the whitest people I've ever seen, you know what I mean? So it's an insane term, but they did, though. So us Greek Australians, or or Greek Italians and so on, we would call each other that in a jokey way. But if an Australian of Anglo-Celtic extraction would call us that, we wouldn't like it. So I totally understand. It's the same thing with the N-word, right? And I would very much like to, if I had some African-American friends and I was like really in with the crowd and I was like one of their brothers, I would love to tell them one day, like, oh, hey man, please let me use the N-word with you guys, and it's going to be genuine, like I'm going to be saying it like as a brother. But they'll probably say no, okay? Even if I was genuine about it, it just wouldn't feel right coming from a non-black person, you know what I mean? So I get it, but again, I have to say, it is primarily a reptilian brain reaction. Even with us, with the Greeks and stuff, when they, if an Anglo-Australian called us wog, we would freak out. I wouldn't like it. But we called each other that, like it was an endearing term when a Greek Australian said it to a fellow Greek Australian. So okay, but yeah, when we react to these things, it's just because it's a past trauma becomes triggered, as like you're just going full reactive. You're just functioning for those few seconds or whatever, completely on fight or flight survival. It is the mechanism. I'm describing the actual mechanism, okay? If people take this and run with it, what I've explained in these few minutes, we can solve like 80% of all this type of stuff happening all across the world forever. But people won't listen, all right? Very few will, anyway.
Speaking, I have never said anything that is anti-Semitic, and had I have said something that was anti-Semitic, Andrew Clavin would have simply showed the clip.
Yes.
Right, a lot of attention's been focused on you constantly referencing Christ is King. Many people believing that although those words in themselves, if you're a Christian, as you are, would not...
There you go. That proves what I was just saying before. It's like, if a detached third-party observer, or if a Jewish person that's not caught up with this genetic trauma, with the persecutions that they've had over the centuries or whatever, they'll be like, well, wait a second, that's just a phrase that Christians use all the time. It's not. She wasn't directing it at me, okay? But we jump to conclusions and stuff, and we lose our shit. Because it's a reptilian brain response.
be offensive, that to Jewish people, when they're being whipped up on social media as they were at the time by people who are genuine white supremacists and pretty brazen anti-Semites, that being smart as you are, you would have known that to deliberately use that.
Who's brazen white supremacists? People that are yelling at them on Twitter, the only place that's got free speech now on the internet. Of the big platforms anyway, because Rumble is, what has Rumble got, like 5% of the pie, total pie? Anyway, complaining, criticizing Israel's way over the top response, okay? I mean, it's quite obvious at this point that they're just hell-bent on completely eradicating Palestinians. I'm not with either side. I've been very clear on this on Facebook. I haven't had time. I've been meaning to make a video about it as well on this channel to say that I'm not with either side, because I have problems with both. And people should have problems with both sides, because if you're only stuck on one side, it's a bit of an NPC-ish behavior. It's like, NPC-ish thinking. It's like, only one side is good and only one side is evil. That's not real life. There's no such thing. There's only one side that's good and the other side is evil. So I will not say that about either side, but I will call a spade a spade. I'll have to say that Israel's response is just so way over the top. You would almost sometimes makes you think that, hey, maybe they let the attacks happen to use it as an excuse to completely eradicate Palestinians. Maybe. Okay, I don't really believe it, but it could be a possibility.
Phrase repeatedly in that time, in that climate, was a deliberate act of provocation to people like Ben Shapiro, who obviously are extremely high-profile Jewish people. Do you accept that?
I'm sorry, which time frame are you talking about when you say at that time?
Well, since the start of the Israel-Hamas war.
Yeah, no. So that phrase, if you're talking about when it began to be a scandal, because I think everyone was quite confused when there was suddenly this narrative that it could be construed as anti-Semitic, which is why it required so much explaining by people of when it became anti-Semitic. I posted a standalone Bible verse, this is just a pure fact, calling for peace. And at the end of the verse, I ended it and said, Christ is King, last November. Andrew Clavin.
So it's totally him, okay? He looked at that and it's like, see, it's what I said before. It's like how the ADL just looks for Nazis everywhere, okay? I admitted that I've partially lived through a similar thing, okay? Although it wasn't as bad, because, Greeks are like a Christian, white nation, okay? And we have a certain status within European history. Not that 99% of Australians are aware of that, because they have no culture there, but still, it's like, Greeks are pretty well known to, with the ancient Greek thing and everything, Greco-Roman civilization, so we're somewhat respected for that. So it wasn't that bad, but still, they just the Anglo Celts back in the day in Australia in the 50s and whatever, they didn't like anyone else. All right, so they used various terms. But like I said, I mean, at least we were white. I mean, they had the white Australia policy there until like the mid or late 70s, something like that. And then it just opened up the floodgates to just every Tom, Dick, and Harry to come in to to what was meant to be a white Christian nation. But that's again for another video.
Even references that. The reason why this even became a scandal is because of Andrew Klavan. Andrew Klavan did an episode called Because Christ is Really King, and then he accused me wrongly of spitting that phrase at a Jew. That simply never happened, as I showed in my first episode back. It was just
making shit up, all right?
Made that up out of thin air. I posted a standalone Bible verse, and I wrote at the end of it, Christ is King, and then a Jew responded to me telling me to quit my job. So what happens sometimes is then time passes and people try to rewrite history.
See what I mean? She said that like without even thinking that it was an anti-Semitic reply to somebody or whatever. Like, I mean, is she the first person in history in the past 2,000 years to say Christ is King after having, written a letter or something or a post that has Bible verses and is talking about Christianity, and ending it with Christ is King is the most logical thing in the world, right? And then someone on Twitter comes out of nowhere and says you should quit your job, that was anti-Semitic. So that was all in his mind. Okay,
but we're not going to do revisionist history here. I tweeted Christ is King appropriately following a Bible verse when I was 38 weeks pregnant, and I stand by that proverb, and I stand by my declaring Christ to be King, as I have done many times in the past,
two things
because
about
it's
that.
Basic Christian doctrine.
Two things about that. Why would you tweet that particular passage from the Bible, ending Christ is King, on 14th of November 2023? What was your motivation?
Yeah, happy to answer that question. So if people remember what was happening at that time, Ben Shapiro was caught on a tape calling me faux sophisticated and some other stuff, a disgrace, I think was the term. And again, I was 38 weeks pregnant, about to give birth, and my husband just told me, every media person in the world is contacting you globally, asking you to give a comment, to say something. It's obviously a very traumatizing thing to go through in the moment when you're that pregnant and suddenly you're like, I just don't want to deal with this drama. I don't mean like trauma in the very leftist, I feel traumatized by this, but just it's a lot happening leading up to birth. And my husband told me to read the Bible. He said, just read the Bible. You don't have to answer these media members. You don't have to give a comment. You don't have to say anything. These things are all fickle. It doesn't matter.
But just to be clear on the chronology, because the video of Ben saying what he said, we said, I think her behaviour during this has been disgraceful, without a doubt. I think her sophistication.
That came first.
Yeah, that came out on 15th of November 2023. But you had posted what you posted on the 14th of November.
That's not correct. You have your timeline wrong. It was the video came first.
So you were responding directly to the video?
No, I'm trying to finish the story, but you just have just so you know, chronologically, you have it wrong. His insult came first. I think it was on the 12th. The insult came.
Were you made aware of the insult because and then did it become public? I found out
on Twitter with everybody else. It was just trending, and so just to go back into it, my husband told me to read the Bible and to realize that these things are fickle and that all of these journalists that were asking me to respond to them are doing it because all they want is clicks and money, and they want they want to use you for a moment. That's not going to matter in the scheme of things in your life. And so I wanted to respond to all of these media members by saying that I'm calling for peace. Christ is King of my heart. I don't need this right now. So that was it.
Oh, hey, what's up? Just wanted to say a quick word about my fantasy novel titled Lifting the Curse, Volume 1, Guardian of the Magic. It's Volume 1 because it's the first half of the first novel in a 9-part planned saga. I have all the outlines for the rest of the sequels planned out, you see. So they're all going to be released in rapid succession. So I just wanted to let you know that people who enjoy a channel like this will probably love this book, because it's a combination of classic high fantasy in the vein of Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Dune, etc., and conspiracy thriller, we could say, like Da Vinci Code, that kind of thing, or Name of the Rose, Umberto Eco, the Italian writer. So I think people that like my work on the channel and my writings on Facebook and so on will actually, there's a very big chance that they will actually enjoy the book as well. So it's only 99 cents at the moment because it's the first in the series, and it talks about real stuff, okay, about what we might term conspiracy theories, okay. It talks about all kinds of culture war stuff, about political stuff, historical things, and on, okay. There's a giant glossary in the end that in which I have over 200 definitions on all these things, including things like problem, reaction, solution, and so on. Okay, so the glossary is pretty much half the length of the book. Not all of the books are going to be like this, but this first entry has got the most glossary terms because it had to, because I mentioned a bunch of things in the start of the saga. So we needed to start the first entry of this thing with a gigantic glossary, right? So I think the guys that like a channel like this one will really like this book, especially if you're a fantasy fan already, because it's original in the sense that it's set on Earth in the current day. Okay, the main villains are the Illuminati. Okay, so it's very current, I see. So I'll talk about the World Economic Forum. I mean, there's a glossary entry about them as well. So it's like this, so it goes on and on like this.
When you appeared on Tucker Carlson on the 16th of November, you said, I will say I'm not going to respond with the same ad hominem attack. But you also told him that day that that was when you first saw the video.
I didn't tell him I first saw the video on Tucker Carlson. I don't understand your question. What, I told Tucker I saw the video on Tucker Carlson?
No, that you had seen the video for the first time that morning.
That I saw the video trending on Twitter, not the morning of Tucker's interview. Sorry, I don't know.
I'm just trying to work out the exact correct chronology.
Yeah, I can help you.
Yeah. So you saw the video on Twitter, and then
on Twitter, yes.
Yeah, and then you put out the passage from the Bible as a reaction to seeing the video.
Yes, like I said, maybe it was 24 hours later after that, when everyone was contacted.
Sorry, but this feels like I mean, I know it's Piers Morgan. He does that. For a second there, it felt like a CIA interrogation. It's like, relax, pal.
Contacting me for comment, I gave the media no comment. So if you look at all the articles, there was no comment given to me at that time about anything because I decided that peace was the best strategy forward. Tucker was booked that day, but he had booked me 6 weeks in advance. That was just his luck that whole incident took place.
Right.
They knew I was going on his show. He books way out in advance. So it just happened to be his luck or misfortune, whichever way you look at it, that was going on at the same time.
So in the build up to this, you'd already made it clear that you'd said on Twitter on November the 3rd, no government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide ever. There is no justification for a genocide. I can't believe this even needs to be said or is even considered the least bit controversial to state. You didn't say what you were talking about in that tweet, but it was widely assumed to be Gaza and what Israel was doing in Gaza. Is that correct? Were you talking?
Okay, she goes on to say that no, it wasn't really that, but what if it was? You know, this is amazing. Like, such a clown world. It's almost like someone making a post and saying, you know, it's not okay to grape anyone, especially like a child, like a 5-year-old or 8-year-old or whatever, and then people attacking them and saying that it's insane. Okay, like if I said it's not cool, you know, thou shalt not kill. Okay, I don't know why I said it like that. Like, should people then come and attack me on Twitter? Should there be some anti-defamation organization that protects killers or grapists or something? You know, I'm trying to think like of the worst crimes, like, you know, grape or murder. You know, that's why I'm using those things. Like, it's insane. Like, what she says, she said the correct thing, okay? But the problem is, you know, I'm not playing dumb. Don't think I don't know what's going on. The problem is, of course, Israel staunchly believes that it's not genocide, what they're doing. They believe that there's no other way. I mean, they kind of are in a catch-22, okay? They are. Because if Netanyahu did not respond, I mean, what leader would not respond, okay, to the October 7th attack? So he has to respond. And I understand very much how the Israelis think, okay? I know, like, what they're thinking is, oh, well, we can never win, you know, whatever we do, the world's always going to be complaining about us, and they're always much harsher on Israel and on the Jews than they are on anybody else, and they cite various examples and say, oh, look, currently right now there's a similar thing happening in such and such place, nobody's complaining about it. But then when Israel does pretty much the identical thing, everyone's complaining about it. So from their point of view, it's like, well, when we do something, it really bothers people. When someone else does the same thing, not so much. So they're like, well, to me, that could only mean one thing, anti-Semitism, okay? And people are masking it as, no, but it's genocide, and no, but this, no, but that. So that's their belief, for the most part, and they're just not going to change. They're going to double down on it, right? So we can't. But I understand. I mean, I don't know. I might agree partially, whatever. Like, I've never lived there. I've known a few Israeli people in Melbourne. They were okay, but I don't know. Like, but it seems to be that's the mindset for the most part. Okay. Now the mindset of the rest of the world is like, well, look. No, it's not that. It's just that we're objectively saying what you're doing is so and so. It's just that you don't want to admit it. So that's basically the two sides here, okay?
Talking about Israel there.
No, actually, when I wrote that tweet, if you look right before that tweet, I had retweeted and liked something from a journalist named Yashar Ali. He had shared a clip of a Congressman, Brian Mast, who got up on a platform and said that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian life. That is despicable.
There you go. If a guy is saying there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian life, doesn't that prove what I was saying a minute ago? You know, that the world is looking at this and saying, okay, well, that's objectively a genocidal statement, okay?
Genocidal language. And I am paraphrasing here, but Yashar Ali said, and he's pro-Israel, by the way, if I'm judging by what he puts online, he said, can we all just admit that this language is unacceptable? And I tweeted that no government in the world, and I was actually commenting on America, genocide is always wrong. And so, by the way, even if I was talking about Israel or I was talking about Palestine, that statement should hold.
No, I agree.
By the way, and I think I mentioned this in a previous video, the one where I reacted with Massey, the guy who Tucker was interviewing. What is it? I forget his first name. Is it Thomas Massey? In a bizarre plot twist, I mean, I have to mention this at this point because it fits. Probably loosely, under a loose definition, some people might think I'm a Zionist. I know it's crazy, right? Because if you look at the things I've been saying up to this point in the video, it just occurred to me a few weeks ago, and I actually made a post about it on Twitter, actually. I'm like, am I actually, like, would some people consider me that? I'll tell you why. It's because I'm a guy that calls a spade, so whatever the truth may be, I don't give a fuck what the right thinks, what the left thinks, what anyone thinks. Like, I'm like, this is true, and I have the facts. You know, speaking of Ben Shapiro, you know, facts don't care about your feelings or your stupid groups or whatever. So, you know, groups meaning organizations that are constantly looking for people to attack. So, basically, I think Judea actually is the ancestral homeland of the Judeans, who we now call the Jews. And if you look at the map, and you look at the ancient map, and you look at the modern location of Israel, it's pretty much in the same place. Because I say this as a Greek person, okay? Because there was a lot of anti-Greek propaganda with some country that borders the north of Greece, some Slavic people. I don't even know what they're called. They didn't have a country of their own, and it was a geopolitical move on their part. So for decades and decades, like since the 60s or whatever, they were putting out propaganda that Macedonia, which is the northernmost state of Greece, of modern Greece, is not actually Greek, which is insane. Like, if you only do, like, go on Wikipedia for 10 bloody minutes, you'll see that they're completely full of shit, right? But then again, you know, are most people in the world NPCs versus a small percentage of people being smart? Or is it the other way around? Is it 95% of the people in the world are educated and intelligent and a small percentage NPCs? No. Most people in the world are NPCs. So, especially in places like America. I mean, America's my second favorite country on earth after Greece, but it's probably the best country overall if you look at history. You know, Constitution, First Amendment, Second Amendment, best things ever. But they are the most ignorant people on earth at the same time. And it's because we need to thank Rockefeller's education system and all this. But, you know, and they don't, most of these people, they're like, they don't know. And they're like, Macedonia is not Greek, and Greeks are like these terrible nationalists that are trying to kick these poor people out of their actual ancestral land. So this is a very bizarre synchronistic thing, like very parallel, so many parallels with that thing and Israel-Palestine thing, with all these people, mostly like Westerners that have never even been there, probably never met a Jewish or Israeli person. They're like, no, it's all lies, and you're trying to base it on the Bible, which is a made-up book. The Bible's not a made-up book. The Bible is probably the most accurate historical document there is. I'm not saying Adam and Eve. I'm saying like historical stuff, like the battles and so on that it describes, you know, and then various genealogies and stuff. That stuff is real. Okay, you can consider it those elements. You can see them as more of a historical book rather than a religious book. Okay, those elements of it about the various wars and so on. So these people are retards who don't understand that it's actually their ancestral land. So I don't know, people who accept that it's they actually have a claim to that land. Are they Zionists? I guess so. So in that loose definition, well, maybe I'm probably part of that camp. You know, even though I do not identify as it, some people might identify me as that. But I have a problem with how they're going about, you know, conquering and maintaining dominion over that ancestral land of theirs. Okay, it's very problematic the way they're doing it. That's all.
Justification
No, I
ever
agree,
in
I
the
agree,
world
but for the record,
genocide. So
I agree.
I was very surprised to see that tweet go viral and people so angry about it. I was actually overseas at the moment. I was in the UK. And so it seemed very strange to me that people would have a problem with it no matter what side you're on. But in that particular moment, I was talking about Brian Mast, and on my show, my very next show, I clarified that.
And do you think, for the record, that what Israel's been doing constitutes genocide?
Well, what I've been having trouble is all of the people that are pro-Israel and say it's not a genocide won't tell me what is a genocide. What percentage of a population has...
I have to say, that is one smart woman, okay? And shifty as well. I'm saying it like in a good way, it's a compliment, you know. Usually that word's not used as a compliment, but I'm using it as a compliment in this case. She's crafty, you know. She could probably like make for a good spy or something like that. You can't trick that woman. It's very difficult to win an argument, to pull the wool over Candace Owens' eyes, let me tell you.
has to be killed before we can use the word genocide. It's a funny little thing. They won't tell you. They won't tell you what constitutes genocide. So I would like a clear understanding of...
So she flips it on him, okay? Instead of answering, she answers with a question and says, well, Piers, so what is genocide, by the way? And eventually, like, in a few seconds, she's going to put him in a bind and he won't know what to say.
of how many Palestinians have to die before we are allowed to term it a genocide. All of the experts can't agree on what a genocide actually is.
Yes, Ms. Candace Owens, that's because they're avoiding the question. They're trying to gaslight the planet. Okay? They're trying to trick us into not recognizing that it's legitimately a genocide. Alright? There, I said it.
But they love to float around the word on virtually every other issue. You know, I had Rabbi Barclay on my show, on one of my last shows when I was on the Daily Wire, and I asked him that question pointedly: what is genocide? Let us know, experts, what percentage of the population of Palestinians has to be killed before we are allowed to say that it's genocide? What I can tell you is I am completely uncomfortable and utterly against the amount of Palestinian innocent lives that have been lost in this conflict, particularly children. And any person who is fearful of stating that the death of innocent children has been utterly unacceptable is a coward.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I completely agree, but do you personally think it constitutes?
He keeps saying I completely agree, but every time he says something, he has to start a new sentence beginning with but. You know, he says, oh, yeah, that's right, but. All right, so that's not a full agreement. That's BS. He's just trying to placate her. And then, but...
genocide, which is the deliberate...
What I'm saying to you is I have pursued on my show.
Yeah.
What is the number?
No, I understand.
What is the official number? That's it. I mean, somebody tell me and I'll give you an answer.
Well, I don't think there is a specific...
Try it when you have...
Well, it's not about a number.
People on both sides of the debate on...
Yeah, but it's not...
No. But what do you mean it's not a number?
Here's my answer.
And do they give you an answer?
Well, no, because here's the point. It's not about specific numbers. It's about an intent.
But it has to be.
Well, no, it's not. It's about an intent to eradicate...
That's not true, Piers, because...
He's partially right, but what she hits him with now is gold. Is the greatest part. Well, one of the best parts.
America, they say that Native Americans, it was a genocide committed by white men. This is what they say, right?
No, but I'm talking about the definition of a genocide is.
But what I'm telling you is that would be incorrect because the majority of Native Americans died from smallpox. It was accidental.
There you go. So she just flipped the tables on him. She's a genius. I mean, because he's saying it's intent, but so when we're talking about Israel versus Palestine, he's saying, oh, it's about intent. Okay, so the Israel does not really intend to genocide them. Okay, so whatever happens in the name, you know, in the pursuit of, you know, they're pursuing the goal of getting rid of the terrorist people only. Okay, the Hamas people, who, you know, it's probably true that they do hide among civilians. So it's like, well, Israel's in a bind. Like, what do you do? I mean, if you got to get the guys, you're unfortunately going to hit some civilians, and it's their fault because they're the ones that are hiding among civilians. All right, so that's the thing. That's where he's coming from. But then she goes on to say, well, yes, but you're not using that same definition when you're when you're slandering the whites for having genocided the American Indians, when the actual truth of it is that 90% plus of them died because of the smallpox. Therefore, the whites didn't really have intent to kill those 90% or whatever it was. It was a very large, it was almost 100%, like 90%, let's say, conservatively, as an arbitrary percentage. So she's like, that happened accidentally through the smallpox, which is a very verifiable historical fact, all right? Everybody knows this. Well, every non-NPC retard, anyway. So, because, sorry, like, if you got the internet, and you don't have the time or inclination to look these things up for like 30 fucking seconds, to do your own due diligence on certain things that you take for that your professor or your high school teacher or the man on the TV tells you and you take for granted because they're the authority, you're retarded. You're an NPC, all right? You got to do your own due diligence on things. It's like those people who think that the northern part of Greece is not actually Greek. Where it's like ancient, like 2,500 year documents that mention it constantly. Aristotle is from there. Alexander the Great was from there. How can it not be a Greek region, all right? It's the same as saying, well, Jews, well, everything is fake in the Bible. That's not their land, all right? About that part, I get pissed off. See, that's where I don't like the other side. That's one of the problems I have with the Palestinian slash leftist slash Muslim side. It's like, this is not their ancestral. Buddy, what are you talking about? You just Wikipedia it and you can find the truth of it in 30 seconds. You don't need Netanyahu to be explaining it to you for 20 goddamn minutes when he's being interviewed by Jordan Peterson, who did not push back, by the way, at all. He was saying, oh, I was going to be harsh on Netanyahu. He didn't push back at all. He was just bowing down to him, by the way. But that's, I'm a massive Peterson fan, but come on, Peterson. You've got balls when it comes to everything else except one thing, right? So anyway, yeah, man, it's just, we're using one definition, what he was saying, what Piers was saying about, oh, it's the intent, okay? They don't really mean it, all right? Like, if you ask the Israeli military, like, in their hearts, they'll be like, no, we're not trying to genocide them. If we get any collateral damage that happens with civilians, is like, well, it's just, all's fair in love and war, all right? There's always casualties on both sides. Fair enough. But then she's saying, yes, but then why do you falsely accuse, according to your definition of genocide, because if there's no intent, there's no true genocide, falsely accuse poor white people for genociding the American Indians. So there's two different narratives, like whites terrible, Jews, Israel can do no wrong. All right, that's basically what she's saying. I spelled it out. She's sort of saying it a bit more subtly, but I did the translation.
Some 90% of Native Americans that lived here died from smallpox, and it's considered a genocide.
No, I understand. I'm telling you what the definition of genocide is, which
well, if the fucking and maybe it is, but if the fucking definition is that, then stop fucking saying that the whites genocided the American Indians, okay? When 90% plus, maybe more than 90% of them died from the smallpox thing accidentally. So there was no intent. Do you understand? So then we should not be saying that about the whites, that they genocided the American Indians. And yet we do. Why? A guy like me, my job is to ask why, to make videos like these and ask why, all right?
It's not about a specific number in any circumstance. It's about an intent to target and eradicate a whole people based on their ethnicity.
I'm disputing that by telling you that they legally say within America that Native Americans, a genocide was committed against Native Americans. Factually speaking, 90% of them, 90 to 93% of them died from smallpox. So it was actually an epidemic.
Okay, sorry. I forgot before, yeah. But she had said 93 here, yeah. Okay. Just 93%.
Right. So is the definition shifting? Because it is my understanding from Rabbi.
Yeah, the definition seems to be shifting. It's like, we just say whatever suits us, as long as white people are crushed and they're made to look bad. And yeah, I just don't want to keep going on and on about this, because the YouTube's truth meter is going to just start getting hotter and hotter, and they're not going to like it, because you know how it is, YouTube people. The more truth we say on here, the worse it is for the content creator.
By Barclay, the definition of anti-Semitism shifts, so maybe the definition of genocide has shifted, but
Well, let
we
me
are
read you. Well,
also
let me
taught
read.
that genocide
Well, let me read you the
in
exact.
school.
Let me read you the exact wording and see whether you think
Current
it applies to.
definition.
Well, let me read you the exact definition of genocide from the Oxford English Dictionary: the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. So, by that definition, do you believe?
By that definition, then, if the accidental death through the smallpox of the American Indians is true, and it is, then it was not genocide. And they continue to say that it was. So fuck you to the people that push the narrative that say that that was genocide. I'm not even American, but hey, brother got to defend his white brothers, isn't it? Because America is like a majority European country founded by European people, so I'm European, so.
Believe that is what's happening to the Palestinian people, and it's being perpetrated by Israel?
Well, I would say is that Israel has proven in the past that they can be very specific when they want to get somebody out, whether that's a hostage or any other certain military operation. And what I am seeing happening, forgetting the specific language of a genocide, is something that I'm using my platform to speak out against, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what the media calls me. I've had every headline. I do not believe that they are being careful in what they are doing. I think it has been it seems to me that the destruction of the hospitals and the schools and of the UN buildings. Would you say, Piers, that you believe that's unintentional?
I do not believe Israel's waging genocide. I think that.
Do you believe? But I'm asking you: do you believe that the targeting, rooms in the hospital,
well, no,
is
I'll be clear with you.
intentional?
I can answer the question. I have said repeatedly.
Can you, though? Do you ever fully and properly and honestly answer these types of questions, Piers?
The last few weeks and months, that I think the proportionality of Israel's response is now unacceptable, and particularly since they decided to go into Rafah, a refugee camp that they set up, to then target Hamas in the middle of a refugee camp.
Yeah, what on earth was that all about? I mean, if that doesn't spell it out as to what the actual intent is, okay, that like spells it out. Like it's like a neon sign saying yes. Our intent is to just completely wipe them off the map.
You're bound to kill.
Then again, see, I don't want to get started now on the Palestinian side, but this whole river to the sea thing. I lived from 21 years old. Like I was born in Melbourne, did primary school there, grade school, I believe they call it in the US of A. 12 years old, we came to Athens, Greece. I was here for about 10 years, did high school, the army, my army set because military service is compulsory for all men. Here, yay, feminism, only men go to the army. So, from 21 till about mid-40s, I was in Melbourne, Australia, unfortunately. I stayed there too long in that matrix, so I've been back in Greece now for the past 4-ish years. So, when I came back, we had Erdogan, the president of Turkey, who's our neighbor on the right side, on the east, constantly yelling at us and saying things like making unbelievable statements, like doing things like constantly like the Air Force and their Navy, like coming into our territory, dangerously close, like right next to Greek islands and so on, like places where they shouldn't be in. Doing these things non-stop. I'll seeing these things on the news all the time. Okay, every day almost. And then you would see them make statements the next day, or whatever, the following days, and they would actually accuse the Greeks of exactly what it is that they'd done, and they were doing it in such a blatant way. And it was like, dude, do you not understand that people are going to see what you did 2 days ago, and then look at your statement and understand that all you're doing is just gaslighting and like projecting? And they kept doing it over and over and over again. And because it was the anniversary of the, I think, was it in 1912? I believe so. I think it was 1912. So at the time it was no, sorry, 1922. And then at the time it was about a couple of years ago, so 2022. And it was the 100-year anniversary of when they burned Smyrna. Okay, it was a city in northern Greece where a lot of Greeks lived there with Turks, but it was a very large population of Greeks. And then they just went in and just burned everything, or just burning houses and just killing people randomly. And they basically threw the Greeks into the sea. Okay, so that was kind of like a smaller version of one of the Holocausts that Greeks have gone through. You never hear about that. Nobody in Hollywood made a movie about that one, did they? No one gives a fuck. But it's not well known, but it's known amongst the Greek people. And they were brazenly and openly talking Turkish TV constantly and saying, well, we're gonna celebrate that, the 100-year anniversary of that, by doing it again, and blah blah blah. At some point, he in all seriousness, Erdogan, he threatened that he was gonna like send a rocket and hit Athens with a rocket, like things like that. All right. So I started thinking to myself, I'm thinking, okay, so I've had lived experience now with this. I've seen this up front. So it's like a Christian, like, let me do the. So you're going to be seeing it from there. Okay, so Turkey. So you've got Turkey and Greece. So you have Muslim country, Greek country, next door neighbors. And the Muslims are undeniably, undoubtedly the aggressors. And when they're doing their aggressor thing, next day they're accusing us of having done it. They're constantly coming into our territory, like sending their ships right next to our islands and stuff, being very provocative in that manner. And the very next day they would say stuff like, the Prime Minister of Greece, Mitsotakis, is saying like, Mitsotakis is very militaristic and is a war hawk, and he's reinforcing the islands with military and tanks and stuff, and because he has intentions of attacking us and blah blah. And I'm like, what the this guy's the one that's constantly bothering us, right? So we're our PM was reinforcing the island with more military because these guys are constantly bothering us. So, and then I saw some similar things going on with the Israel-Palestine thing. And I'm thinking, okay, one is a Muslim country next to a Christian country. The other one is a Muslim country next to a Jewish state. I'm like, the common denominator in both is like there's a Muslim neighbor and they behave uncannily similar. All right, so I could make an entire series of videos about that bad stuff that the Muslim side / the Palestinian side in this case, in this particular conflict, and in my conflict, my own homegrown conflict, it's the Turks in this case, the Ottomans. So, but either way, Islam is the common denominator, and it looks to be a universal set of behaviors, okay? But I don't want to go on too much of a massive tangent with that one, but I've lived this. I'm telling you, I never would have said this had I still been in Melbourne, Australia. I only realised this ever since I came back to Greece for good, permanently, and I started seeing how Erdogan was behaving. Okay, so what I'm saying, neither side is an angel. Okay, but now particularly we're bitching about the way Israel is handling this, which is just way over the top.
So many innocent civilians in the process, I think is unacceptable.
No
but
shit.
I'm just curious, given that you tweeted about genocide and no government ever has a right to do it, whether by your calculation from that definition, what Israel is doing is deliberately killing a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group.
Yeah, well, what I can say to you again, because these definitions shift, I don't think we need to focus on the word because I'm telling you what I believe. And my belief is that they are not being careful whatsoever. My belief is that there has been too much loss of Palestinian life.
That's different to genocide, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but okay, that's fine. We don't need to. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why you're like obsessing over this one word. It doesn't matter.
Because
the point is,
Yeah, he is. He's like, but that's just Piers Morganism. I mean, he's just like that.
Tweeted
that
about
I'm telling
genocide.
you, just like you told me.
I'm only trying
The
to clear
tweet
up
is about Brian Mast. So you're harping on this issue. There's a lot more topics we should talk about. I'm being very clear in how I feel about this issue. The Israeli government is not being careful in how they're dealing with this. I agree with you that the amount of death has been completely unacceptable. When I tweeted that was back in November. So we're talking way more lives that have been lost. And that tweet was about Brian Mast. So
I get it.
I could have never imagined the amount of dead Palestinian children that I would see on my X feed since then.
It's horrific.
You know, it's heartbreaking to me as a mother. It's horrific to me that the media seems almost complicit.
The Unison MIDI chord pack.
Unison's MIDI chord pack.
The Unison MIDI chord pack.
If you don't know how to make chords,
in the dehumanization of Palestinians, and I will not be on that side because at the end of the day, the hit pieces, the name calling, the anti-Semitism, the psychopathic language that seems to be coming out of people means nothing. And I want to make sure everybody knows this, right? At the end of the day, you are going to have to account to God for the things that you allowed, for the things that you were complicit in, and for the things that you did not have enough courage to state.
Okay.
True, and both sides have done bad stuff. Like I keep saying, I'll never, ever, ever say, like there's a lot of these NPCs that are, you know, those die-hard Palestine leftists. No. I can never get on board with that. Nor can I agree with, like, I don't think one belief or one ideology is worse than the other. Like it's equally as bad whether you're like a die-hard, well, Palestinians are just so innocent and it's just because they've been oppressed and because their land was taken from them and the Jews are not, all this BS about the Palestinians are the real Semites anyway and all, you know, all that stuff. Judeans are from Judea. Get over yourself. Now, the other side though, okay, now I'm going to do the Israelis and the Zionists, all right? They, the ones that are like the full-on supremacist types who think, oh, these are just a bunch of animals and we just need to get rid of them and blah, 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 and mow the lawn. I mean, the Israeli military's got literally has a phrase that they say mowing the lawn. They occasionally mow the lawn, okay, every few years, all right? Getting rid of more and more Palestinians, okay? Because the goal is to completely get rid of them, right, at the end of the day. But then the other side has got the same goal, from the river to the sea. And I'm not a person who's, like I said, I'm never going to say one side is perfect, the other one is demonic. No way. Okay? But at this particular juncture, in the past year, roughly, almost a year, however long it is, 7-8 months, the Israeli side has been steadily losing the propaganda, the game, like the narrative game, like they're just losing the narrative. Okay, they need to tone it down. Like they're going too full on with this. Like I said earlier in the video, it's all about trauma, ancestral trauma. Okay, racial trauma. It's stored in their DNA. They need to have like these massive spiritual healing sessions or something as a nation. I'm serious. So people will think, what the hell is this hippie BS? It's not hippie BS. Okay? Just fucking Google quantum physics for 2 minutes and you'll see that there's much more to this world than the table that I just knocked on, okay? The physical world we see around us is just an illusion, alright? I mean, quantum physics will tell you that. So yes, the spiritual, the invisible, the woo-woo stuff actually works. If it's a legit modality, anyway, it's going to work. So that's the key, that's the crux of all this. Like, we all have our various, I mean, the Greeks have got a lot of racial trauma stored up with, against, like with anything that has to do with Ottoman Turks. The Ottoman Empire and the Turks in general, okay? There's a lot of racial sort of animosity between the Greeks and the Turks, and everybody has that, okay? But particularly with the Jewish situation with the Israelis, it's very heightened because they have gone through a lot of stuff and for much longer, okay? So they have a particular chip on their shoulder that they need to clear. They need to somehow find a way to heal that trauma, because if it doesn't happen, what we'll see is that with each new generation, we're going to have this same pattern being repeated and repeated and repeated. It's like, oh, I'm a victim, and I'm going to call it an Semite if you even say something like as innocuous as Christ is King under a post that had nothing to do with you, pal, and then you just jump in and say, hey, why did you say that? Okay, so you're looking for oppressors and attackers everywhere. That's because it's a lot of trauma in the DNA, all right? So, unusually so, compared to all the other tribes on Earth, all right? So, there has to be a way to heal that, because otherwise, we're going to have the same pattern. Like, we're going to have things like this, like how Andrew Clavin treated her, okay? He said stuff that was just completely made up, all right? He was just imagining that she was saying one thing, and he misconstrued it that it meant something else, all right? Like I said at the beginning, this is a knee-jerk reaction. It's a fight or flight reaction for the most part, almost 100% of it. But we'll just say for the most part, because absolutes are not supposed to exist.
The amount of death of Palestinian children has been unacceptable, full stop.
Okay.
Bibi Netanyahu, in my view, should not be given an invitation to Congress. I think it's unacceptable.
And doing that, as a lot of people have rightly pointed out, it just makes America even more hated than it already is by a large percentage of the world. I mean, maybe they're wrong to begin with for hating America and the West, and I would say they are, because the West is the best. But, you know, various certain countries in particular, like the Middle East and so on, they don't like America very much, and this just makes it worse. Like bringing someone like Netanyahu in, who's considered by many countries at the moment as being someone who's carrying out a systematic genocide. They're going to be like, you're bringing this guy to speak to the Congress, and you worship him, more or less. I mean, what is this? So this is not good optics at all. It's not good, none of it.
Unacceptable.
I agree.
Unacceptable.
I don't
and to
think
be
he should
clear, for whatever the reason,
be leader
when
of
it comes to
Israel.
the topic of Israel, it does seem that journalists...
No, Piers, I prefer right-wing conservative governments. Like if it was like more of a leftist government in Israel, probably would have been worse.
...are fearful to critique Israel.
Not probably. The left is always worse. Like, to quote, what's her name? I don't remember that name. Her name. That blonde conservative author lady who had predicted that Donald Trump was going to win on Bill Maher's show the first time Trump won. What's her name? Ann Coulter, okay? That famous quote she has is like, the right is wrong sometimes, the left is always wrong. I cracked up. I laughed so hard when I first heard her say that. That is a true statement.
Well, I'm
Now,
not at
why
all.
is that?
So,
Because I would say, Piers, that you seem a little fearful to critique Israel and to want to
Yes.
always seem that you're
Yes.
coming across a little bit understanding of everything they're doing.
Yeah.
What is it that makes
I
journalists,
think
corporate
his-
journalists,
What is it with this thing? I mean, maybe it's not true, because it makes people go on sort of conspiratorial rabbit holes and start saying, oh, because all the really low level conspiracy theorists, they say, well, everyone is the Israelis, the Jews own you, or something, or they've got blackmail on you. Like, they don't own this guy. Nobody. He's just an idiot. But the thing is, not an idiot, but like for some particular views that he has, it's like, come on, pal, what's the matter with you? Does your brain not function? Sometimes it doesn't make sense, so people make things up, like they go in overly conspiratorial mode, and they're like, oh, they must have, the Mossad has got something on you, were you on Jeffrey Epstein's island or whatever. But it's just, a lot of these people are just ideologues. I mean, they've been corrupted by various mind viruses that they've picked up in their little bubble environment where they live in, like all these leftist or centre-left type of, like the people like the British. I mean, and especially British society, it's toxically left wing. Like, okay, it sort of veers to the left, like in a very disturbing and bizarre, nonsensical way. All right, I mean, look at how, like, to paraphrase Otto from the best comedy of all time, A Fish Called Wanda, it says something like, I thought British men didn't like women, the way they talk. That's like one of the best lines in a movie ever. And it's the way they talk, honestly. It's like, it's so homosexual, to put it lightly, all right? So, yeah, there's just some like, I don't know, like lack of testosterone. Something's wrong, okay, that makes them like more leftist than they should be, more than ordinary. And you see it manifested in just the way they speak and just the way they reacted when Trump first visited back in whatever it was, 2017 or whatever. Like, that reaction was like the most astounding thing. No other country on earth reacted that way, okay, to a Trump visit. All right, so there's something wrong with him. So a lot of it is that it's not just that he, like, somebody's got a gun to his head and says, oh, you must say positive things about Israel. They just think that they need to say that to look better or whatever, but it's BS. You just need to have some balls like her and just push the envelope a bit and widen the Overton window, and then more people will be able to discuss these things more openly. Why can't we? Why shouldn't we be able to? Because the second Holocaust is going to happen if we say that, God forbid, Israel did a boo-boo, did something wrong. Everyone fucks up. Why can't you? All right? And why can't we point it out if you do? And if you try to tell me to not, you can go fuck yourself.
Okay, let me respond.
Fearful of saying, like, hey, Israel has done a ton of things that have been very wrong.
Yes, and I have said they're wrong. I think Netanyahu should go. I think
But he thinks Netanyahu should go because Piers is anti. I mean, he didn't like. You remember how his first interaction with Alex Jones when he interviewed Alex Jones. I mean, he just doesn't like the right wing. That's why he doesn't like Netanyahu.
of that cabinet should go, because some of them have definitely been using genocidal language. I think a lot of what Israel's been doing in the last few weeks is completely unacceptable. But ultimately, I also, from the start of this conflict, believe that Israel not only had a right to defend itself after the terror.
Well, yes, it has a right to defend itself. I mean, like I keep saying, I'll go as far as saying it's, the state of Israel is actually their ancestral homeland, because, newsflash, it actually is.
Attack on October the
course.
7th, but a fundamental duty to its people. And here's where I'm just curious about your tweeting through this procedure, this whole war, because on October the 7th, you didn't tweet anything. You didn't tweet anything on October the 8th. And October the 9th, you tweeted, so much world peace ever since we got the Orange Man
October the 9th, hey, that's my birthday.
out of office. So glad the adults are back in charge. A a lot of people say, well, if you care this much about innocent people being killed, why didn't you say anything when 1,200 people were massacred to death in the most brutal, barbaric manner in this awful terror attack by Hamas, and nearly 7,000 more were wounded, some of them...
Well, because maybe she is part of the crowd that kind of thinks that maybe Israel is a little bit more of an aggressor in this case, like overall, like if we look at it from a bird's eye POV, from the beginning of this thing, however many years, roughly about a century it's been going on, because we can think of it as like even from the 20s when early Jewish settlers started coming in, you know, before the National Socialists and all that. A pretty solid case can be made that, you know, like I was saying before, neither side are angels, and I absolutely stand. Look, I want to do this. I mean, I'm not like a blue-pilled Christian, like a Bible-bashing Christian, but I put my hand on the Bible, saying, I honestly believe both sides are bad. Okay, I believe this. Right hand. Okay, I believe it. But I would say it's 60-40. It's not 50-50 in this case. Okay, 60% Israel, 40% the Palestinian side. So Israel is a little bit worse. That's all I'm saying. Because true anti-Semitism would be like, it's only Israel's 100% wrong and the Palestinians are angels. No, you're a fucking retard if you believe that. And you're both, like I said before, like whoever takes the 100/0% equation for either side, that's retarded. Because that not only does it not apply here, it doesn't apply for anything in life, in the entire fucking multiverse, ever, anywhere. There's no, you know, one thing is 100% this and the other one is 0. Like, there has to be a nuance, right? But I would say around 60-40, like Israel's a little bit, you know, Israel is like screwed up a little bit more, okay? They've done a little bit more of the whole, you know, terrorizing and ethnically cleansing little villages and stuff in the beginning, like in the early days of the founding of Israel. I mean, we know all the stories. I can make other videos about this, but most of us know the basics of that one. Like, there was a lot of terrorism involved and so on. So we can keep going on back and forth of who struck first and blah, blah, blah. But like I said, I don't like the retards that say it's not their ancestral homeland. Fuck these people. Because why? I'm saying F these people because, gee, I don't know. I'm one of those people that when someone is anti-truth, whether this truth suits me or not, I'm going to tell them to go fuck themselves, because for me, the highest ideal ever that exists is truth. You know, everything is downstream from that, from upholding the truth. If you uphold the truth as your highest ideal, everything's going to be downstream from that, and your life is going to go very smoothly. It might be a little bit difficult in the beginning, like Jordan Peterson says that. It's like, you know, he always holds this idea firmly in mind that he must say the truth no matter the consequences, and to trust that things are going to work out for the best in the end if you take that approach. That's how I believe that as well. So if either of the two sides is saying bullshit, I'm going to call them out on it. Okay? So when the left side says that it's not Israel's ancestral land, they're full of shit. When Israel says that, well, you know, they all like that horrible quote that thing that she quoted before, that the guy on Twitter was saying that it's not, what did he say? It's not genocide when it's done on Palestinians or something, or whatever that was. That's also BS. I'm going to condemn that as well. So I just condemn bullshit wherever I see it. I don't take sides. I've made several posts on Twitter and Facebook in the past several months saying that, you know what, I'm not Middle Eastern. I don't care about either side. Sorry, I don't.
Catastrophically and irreparably. Why did that not compel you to say anything?
Well, first and foremost, Israel's a foreign country, so typically I talk about topics that have to do with America. Secondly,
That's right. Why the fuck should we be sending all our psychic energy to that place? Right?
quoting my Twitter feed. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. I also had a daily podcast in which I did respond directly about what happened and called the events horrific multiple times, said what Hamas did was absolutely horrific. So you're using a snapshot of my Twitter feed where you're acknowledging that I didn't tweet for days to suggest that I didn't have anything to say about what had happened. Now, to be clear, I am consistent on all matters. I do not want America involved whatsoever in anything that is happening in Israel. I don't want my dollars sent over to Israel. We should not be supporting.
Ladies and gentlemen, doesn't that make perfect sense?
Israel. Obviously, Thomas Massey has done a lot of work showing how it doesn't even make economic sense that we have so much debt and yet we're...
Doesn't make economic sense. It's just that organizations like AIPAC have, over the decades, managed to get a foothold in the entire process of the lobbying process and so on in the Congress, and it's like they just convince, especially the right-wing politicians, convince them to be pro-Israel or else. All right, so that's what it is. So really, there's nothing for America or for individual politicians to gain. Well, individual politicians gain because they know that they're going to be re-elected if they play ball, and if they don't, you don't want to know what's going to happen to them if they don't. You know, never-ending slander campaigns and so on.
Sending money over to support Israel. And the biggest issue, by the way, that I have with Israel in talking about them being above reproach is the fact that they are supplying the arms to murder Christians, okay? In Armenia, the oldest Christian country in the world, and yet nobody talks about.
Man, when I watched this video several times today in preparation for this reaction, when I saw this, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, just saw a vision of, the Overton window just exploding and becoming 10 times bigger overnight, It's incredible that she actually said that. We need people with big platforms, okay? Powerful influencers to actually talk about this stuff, because we're only hearing about, I've never ever seen a movie made about the Armenian genocide. I've never seen a Hollywood movie made about the Holodomor. I've never seen a movie that portrays like a big budget one now, okay? There might have been like a small miniseries here and there, or some non-Hollywood produced film or something that's like smaller, like independent film or something, or series, that depicts the Bolsheviks as the bad guys, or if not equally as bad as the National Socialists, maybe even more so, because they were actually worse than Tiny Mustache Man and company. But nobody tells us that, because history is written by the winner. When have you seen a massive Hollywood production about the Pontian genocide? That's the proper name of the genocider I referenced earlier. That happened about 100 years ago. That was perpetrated on the Greeks by the Ottomans. We never hear, no one gives flying fuck about any of these, okay? But there's Schindler's List and a bunch of all these, like, what is it, Sophie's Choice and all that stuff, right?
That for whatever reason, it seems to be the circumstance that when Jewish people die in Israel, it's wall-to-wall coverage.
Yep.
But when Christians die all over the world, nobody
No one gives a fuck, okay? It's crickets.
talks about it. Everyone wants to correlate everything to World War II. Everyone wants to talk about Adolf Hitler, and rightfully so. He was a horrific person, but nobody wants to talk about.
He was. That's the thing. Elon Musk, may peace be upon him. The fact that he bought he bought Twitter. I knew exactly what he was doing when he bought it. The first second he made his intentions clear about buying it, I thought, yeah, he's one of us, and he's doing it to de-wokeify it. And 6 months later, he came out, six months after the purchase was official, he came out and said, look, I did it because I saw civilization going down the toilet, because they were like, it's like these far left retards over in whatever suburb, whatever area that is. I don't remember now, but it was one of two of the most far left regions in America, where that Twitter HQ was. And he's like, this technology is giving them a megaphone to transmit all this mind virus all around the planet. So I saw that, so I had to buy it. So he did the right thing there. I mean, it's not perfect. A lot of people are complaining about certain accounts being banned and stuff because of, whatever, saying too much truth, I guess. But it's relatively amazing. I mean, it's incredible compared to everything else, Facebook and so on, YouTube. So there's a lot of stuff. It's a Wild West over there, and you see various views, okay, on the Hitler thing, both good and bad. So it's all open to debate, and I've been looking at things, but the deeper you look, you're like, okay, fair enough. He pushed back, and he stopped the Bolsheviks from taking over Europe, okay? Anyone would deserve a medal for that, yes, I said that, get over yourselves. But what they wouldn't deserve a medal for is the fact that, he says it even in his book, okay, that since the Germans are it's not up for debate that they are the master race, they are then entitled to take over the world. So he just takes that as a given. It's like, yeah, of course we should, But when the Jews say that they're the chosen race, it's like, no. But the Germans saying it, it's fine. So both sides behave like that, okay? They both think that they're the ones that should take over. But he was like, okay. So then we have the right to enslave the rest of the planet, and people, the inferior races will be working in our factories and so on, and we would just be chilling in Greek islands and stuff, and like in giant villas, having servants and everything. Like, that was their goal, that was their plan, and they wanted to do this. The term New Order is something that he came up with, like the New Order of Europe was going to be along the lines of what I said, and then he wanted to replicate that all over the planet. And there was a lot of extermination and genocide that would have involved a lot. Okay. So both sides were horrendous. Okay. The only thing I liked that the National Socialists did is that they successfully stopped the growth, the expansion of the thoroughly satanic Bolsheviks into Europe. Other than that, I can't decide which side was worse than the other. I mean, it was horrible. Okay, so yeah, he was a horrible person. I just had to say, I had to comment on that. Sorry.
Henryk Yagoda, right? Nobody wants to talk about the Bolsheviks. Nobody wants to talk about.
See, there's another amazing thing she does for the expanding of the Overton window. Nobody talks about the Bolsheviks and so on. Like I said before, when have we seen a Hollywood film that depicts the communists as bad? Okay, definitely as bad as the Nazis, but objectively they were worse, even worse, because the communist side was dysgenic, the Nazi side was eugenic, At least they wanted to improve their race. The others, they just wanted to destroy, absolutely level everything. So that's just a net loss. Like, there's nothing, no production, no nothing, no improvement.
About the Christian Holocaust. I am tired of the media, exhausted of the media not speaking about what is happening to Christians all around the world. And it is especially horrific, while at the exact same time that it is happening, the slaughter of Christians in Armenia, the arms being supplied by Israel, that the media turns the other way and says, oh, okay, but what about what's happening in Israel? So you know what I'm asking for? Actual.
Yeah, it's just too one-sided, okay? And the people who can't see this, well, they can't see it. It's like a fish that's never been taken out of the water. It's like, what do you mean I'm surrounded by water? You're an NPC, you can't fucking see anything. If you think that it's normal that you're just having just one narrative being pushed constantly, and you don't see, if you don't see that there's something wrong with that, no wonder people are always saying Americans are the most ignorant people.
Equality, okay? Because it seems like this is like a special category, the special relationship that we have. I'm a Christian first, okay? And so my concerns are going to be with what's happening to Christians all around the world, because it is us. We are the number one most persecuted religion in the world. And all Christians watching this need to realize the time
Candace Owens for president, ladies and gentlemen.
is now to start speaking up, because we have been silenced about the things that are happening to us for a very long time. And the media is very clearly not our friend. When there is wall-to-wall coverage of
You are fake news. Trump said it. That's why I love Trump, for the most part, because he told the truth about fake news. A truth that I was aware of, by the way, 20 years before Trump became POTUS. But of course, NPCs wouldn't know that even today. So they're like, oh my God, he's attacking the media. He's such a tyrant. You're such a retard. That's the actual truth.
Christians being killed in Armenia, Christians being killed in Nigeria, and the treatment of Christians in America and all across the globe today, then you ask me if I will use my platform and I will use my voice to speak about what's happening in Israel.
Oh,
How about
what
that?
a beautiful woman. All right. And she's, look at this. Like, I'm loving this picture. It's just so organic. It appears to be like minimal or no makeup. And just the way she's done it is just like, it looks so natural. Just a beautiful woman. Inside and out. This lady, I really like her. I really love me an intelligent woman. Intelligent, well-spoken, conservative woman, I do. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed, please share, like, and subscribe. And also, please check out my associated channel, The New Aeon 2012, which was my original channel. And it's exclusively focused on spirituality and occultism. So some of you might be interested in that content, so go ahead and subscribe. Also, please check out the novel. It only costs 99 cents because it's the first entry in the saga. I have the link to the Amazon page below. If you're hesitant for whatever reason, you can get the first chapter for free. You get the PDF for the first chapter for free, no email sign up required or anything. So there's a link to that down below as well. Last but not least, please follow me on Twitter if you're a Twitter user, because that's where all the fun is these days. I will see you soon.